Welcome back, all of you. Okay, 1 more minute, then we'll start. तुम लोगों को कुछ एंडसेम्स की डेट या ऐसा कुछ इंडिकेशन मिला है क्या कि कब तक होंगी क्लासेस या ऐसा कोई डेट्स आई हैं क्या तुम लोगों के पास? एनी एनी इंफॉर्मेशन ऑन दैट रिगार्ड?
नहीं सर, उसके बारे में कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन अभी तक नहीं
अभी
मिली।
अभी तक नहीं आया ना? बिकॉज द लास्ट मीटिंग यहाँ पे जो हुई थी उसमें भी यही बोले थे कि you will give your ransom when you come here. When that will happen, we don't know.
और उसके बाद अगर कोई सीनेट मीटिंग हुआ होगा तब इन्फॉर्मेशन मिला होगा। अब तक तो कोई सीनेट मीटिंग उसके बाद नहीं हुआ है,
अब
तो इसीलिए
तक कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन। चलो, anyways, ठीक है, we'll start now. Let others join in the meantime. Recording is on. Right. So, welcome back to computer applications. Today we are going to begin the fourth module of our class of computer applications. This will include statistics. This will include uh, data processing, regression analysis, neural networks, fuzzy logics, and basically how you deal with the data that you receive, right? The purpose of this module is basically to go to the extra length of what you do with all the data that you are receiving from various applications and of computer applications that you have already done. For example, like you have simulated, suppose a slope stability analysis you have done, or you have done a foundation stabilization analysis, you have done hydrological analysis, or you have done a ventilation modeling where you have seen how the ventilation or how the air is moving from one place to another in an underground mine. All these analysis will generate huge amount of data, right? For example, in a slope stability analysis, we did a sensitivity analysis. Remember, so in sensitivity analysis, what we were doing, we were varying the one of the parameters such as the slope, or one of the parameters may be the material properties of the soil, or the unit weight, cohesion, Poisson's ratio, anything we are basically varying and finding out what is its effect on the overall slope stability, right? So there can be various many other types of variations as well, right? There can be geometrical variations. There can be uh, external force that are varying. So different kinds of movement on the slope that can also change the stability of the slope, right? And all these, when you try to simulate or try to calculate with other, suppose even the numerical equations that we discussed right at the beginning of the rock slope technology, we find that with respect to the different types of inputs that we are giving, like for example, a slope of 100 meters height, uh, 37 degrees of inclination, 4 benches, 2-meter berms, 10 meters of halt road width, and suppose a dumper is assumed to be moving, which has a gross weight of 630 tons. And there are seismic activities that are going on. There is a problem of water that is also there. So all these basically are the inputs that we are giving, right? And what we are getting out of that analysis ultimately depends on what type of analysis we are doing. In limit equilibrium, we directly get the factor of safety, right? The critical factor of safety. In finite element analysis, actually, we are getting many more types of outputs. We are getting stress, strains, loads, or deformations, and based on that, we are calculating basically factor of safety. So that is also an output. In hydrological analysis, similarly, we are getting different other outputs like what is the flow rate, what is the velocity, what is the pressure that is exerted due to that flow. And if we couple those things up, we can see how the hydrostatic head basically is affecting the overall stability of the slope as well, right? And in ventilation simulation, we similarly, like the fluid dynamics, we have other outputs like, again, flow rate, uh, resistance to the flow, or uh, quantity of uh, air that reaches, velocity, and so on, right? So all these analysis, even just talking about simulations till now, we are having a huge amount of data with us, right? Any analysis we do. Now, what to do of this data? We just have found some way to simulate and find out some output that is there. But is it practical to do a simulation analysis each and every time we have uh, a problem in our hand? Suppose you are working in a mine and you have suppose a slope design problem that has to be applied to a full project, and you have sufficient amount of time and resources that you can devote to a good enough simulation study. So that's okay, right? We can devote time, we can devote resources as well, and we can find out for each and every situation what will be the probable factor of safety, and we can design our stabilization measures, or we can design our slopes in a stable way, and so on, right? But suppose we have so many similar analysis already done or already performed for a region, and we understand that uh, though uh, though each and every situation has different effects on overall say stability of the slope, but uh, small changes in parameters will have certain effects that can uh, that need not be every time simulated to get the final output. In that sense, and in various other cases as well, the data that you have received will be very helpful. So suppose you have done 100 or 200 simulations already, and you have different kinds of inputs that are given, like you have different heights of dumps that are there, you have different angles, you have different material properties from different places maybe, and you have different sets of input parameters that are giving certain outputs, or in terms of this example, factor of safety. Using that data, actually you can analyze this data and predict what will happen in future, or you can find out patterns that, okay, like we do for sensitivity analysis, the unit weight of that material is giving us a higher effect on factor of safety as compared to, say, cohesion or internal angle of friction, or the height of the dump is much more affecting the factor of safety as compared to the berm width, say. So all these analysis, basically what we are doing is whatever data we are getting, whatever inputs we are giving, and whatever data we are getting out, we basically are analyzing that data and finding out the patterns, right? So the whole purpose of the statistical analysis that we will be discussing right now is to move away from the simulations and find out, if we have the data with us, what what we can interpret from that, and what information we can get from that, and then what predictions we can make and what future planning we can do, right? So all this data interpretation, data management, data prediction, and uh, uh, suggesting what to do in future based on the prediction. All this comes in the statistical analysis. Uh, in computer applications in mining, so though statistics itself is a uh, huge subject area itself, and we can dedicate many courses rather than classes, if you say. So what we'll be doing in computer application in mining in this module is basically focusing on what we can do with the data that is more relevant to generally what we get in mining scenarios. So let me start with very basic, and though I won't be going into depth of each and every type of statistical analysis uh, or each and every aspect of those discussed, but what finally we will get from this is a way in which we can actually use our data that we have from either field data or from simulation data or from any other types of values or numerical data that we get uh, from field, from lab tests, from our experience or from reports, whatever the case may be, and use that to find out if we can actually get some useful information that will help us maybe uh, plan future events or predict future events, and help us in understanding what will happen from what has happened, right? So that will be the whole idea behind this statistical module, which will start from now. I think it will take 1 or 2 weeks if everything goes as planned. And then after this, we will cover the, if we have time, we will cover the uh, some part of remote sensing and GIS application, very basics that are useful for mining scenario. Okay. So let's start with this, a small idea of what we will be doing. So in this part, today mostly we will be discussing about what actually is a statistical analysis, very basics of that, overall how it pictures, how it feels like, what are the general types, and what can we expect from the different types of data analysis, what are predictive analysis types, and if time permits, we'll also look into some aspects of regression analysis, which will be our priorities. So as we'll be moving ahead, we will be discussing which types of analysis are relevant for us. Though any data that you have, even the random data you once generated, can be analyzed in multiple number of ways. But what we want to do and what we want to get out of that should be clear enough, right? So you can dive into deep into a statistical analysis if you want to. It's a very uh, what to say, a very attractive branch of mathematics if you have that mindset. But we won't be able to cover all aspects. But what is relevant to the data that we receive, we will surely try to at least get an idea of how to do, what to do, and when to do it. Okay. So in a nutshell, if we talk about a statistical analysis, any data that we have, the collection, presentation, analysis, and interpretation, all these aspects are covered in statistical analysis. How we are collecting that data, how we are managing it, how we are presenting it. Is the data that we are getting of a similar type? Is it like What is your favorite food? That is also a data. A survey that contains which is your favorite dish, that also is a data. Right from that to what are your average grades from last 3 semesters or last 6 semesters, to uh, in our case, what will be the factor of safety for a slope, or what will be the total quantity of airflow that will get inside at a particular mine location. All these things depend on what kind of data that we are seeing, right? So what kind of data is there, how we collect it, how we present it, very important. Like, you can present it in a table, you can present it in a pie chart, you can present it in histograms. These all things basics, you have been using Excel for a long time. So all the basic types of representations. Apart from that, there are many complex types of representations as well, right? Uh, these days, infographics have been one of the major thrust points. You have to use it, considering the decreasing attention span of many people. You can't just type text and or just present the text and that will work out for you. These days, believe me, attention span of even the old generations or higher generations than me have decreased quite a bit. What to talk about the next generation that is coming. So, so we have to keep their interest whenever we are presenting our research, our work, our whatever we are doing. And whenever we are presenting, we are basically selling ourselves, right? So selling our work, we are basically like presenting a sales pitch that this is what I have done, and this is why it is important. And you can't expect at present, I feel, with all the technological developments, all the availability of so many graphics, so much animations and all is there, you can't expect just a simple paragraph of text to attract anyone that you are presenting your work to. So presentation is one of the major what to say thrust points that you have to do when you do a statistical analysis or any data analysis that you do. Uh, uh, I will give you one very nice example. My research was 1 year of my research was in Australia, and what I saw there was it's not that the amount of work the guys or the researchers do in Australia is very large amount, or they are always engrossed in their work or something like that. You won't believe if statistically, if I say what work we do in India, I feel 1/10 of the work in terms of quantity is done in Australia in terms of research. But the 1/10 work they do, the way they present themselves, the way they sell their work, the way they present their work to the audience is so gracious, so full of material, or just we say in Hindi, gagar mein sagar bhar dena, right? So in very small terms, they fill up so much value into their research in just a small part that many times we are not able to compete that much, even though we might be like uh, keep on working, keep on generating nonsense amount of garbage data, and keep on working in our labs and in our fields and doing so much work, hard work. If we can't present our work there, we are basically uh, wasting our data. It's rotting with us. And again and again, that's why whenever I talk, I tell presentation and how you present your work is one of the most important part whenever you are uh, at whatever platform you are working. Like you all will be presenting your reports. Now reports, though by definition should have much more text than figures, but addition of a single figure that represents what you have talked about will be much more impactful than just paragraphs and paragraphs of description, right? A schematic diagram of your experiment will be much better in explanation to a reader as compared to a full line by line description of that, right? In your reports, in your lab journals, in anywhere in your interviews, when you present your presentations in the various mid assessments or project assessments, try and visualize it as much as possible. Don't overdo it, because overdoing everything is an issue. But yes, presentation is very, very important. Okay, let's again continue that. So presentation, collection of data, analysis of data. What we found from that data. If I am getting a relation between my factor of safety with respect to my input parameters like length, like height, angle, and so on. So is there any relation, any relevant relation is there? Will a randomly generated value be having same relation with respect to that, or is my generated value having a specific relation? Uh, uh, suppose I saw that factor of safety is I feel dependent on the amount of vegetation that is there. Okay, uh, and I did some 100 analysis and found that okay, these slopes that had vegetation over it were much more were having like 10 or 15% more factor of safety than the slopes that didn't have vegetation over it. But is it possible that in a randomly selected slopes, suppose I selected any random 100 slopes, can they also have this variation of 15 to 20% higher factor of safety than as compared to the average? That also is possible, right? So I select any 100 locations at random, and I select any 100 vegetated slopes at random, right? And it can be a case that even in different selections of those 100 slopes, I can get a variation of 15 to 20% factor of safety by just a random selection method, right? So the significance of my hypothesis that, okay, uh, that green or the vegetated slopes have higher factor of safety might not be actually relevant that place, right? So all this also, this proving hypothesis or proving that what assumptions I have made is true, or what I propose that this is what I observed is true, that we say hypothesize is true, that also has to be judged in certain ways, right? It has to be separated from a random change in outputs to a specific relational change in output. So we say uh, the relevance of this relation, or the relevance of this hypothesis, is it relevant enough that you can okay say that okay what you have found is actually true or not? So all this also we can actually judge by doing some statistical analysis that we will be also discussing. And interpolation of data that we have already seen. If we know how the data will behave, we can actually predict the future events based on different inputs that we can give, right? So suppose I know that my uh, quantity of air that goes in is inversely proportional to the length of the gallery that I flow the air through, right? So if I know that, and I have a definite correlations that are there that I have found out, then I can predict that okay, if I increase the length from 30 meters to 50 meters, I know how much quantity with the given pressure conditions, with the given input pressure and other properties, uh, how much quantity will be there. So the prediction or the interpolation part also comes up here, right? So all this part and many more things can be done in statistical analysis. The only thing that we have to take care is what type of data we are getting, and what analysis we are doing on it. So the data and the analysis, these two things we have to be clear about. Okay. So in terms of that, there are different uh, like categories of a statistical analysis. Like uh, the first one you can say is a descriptive analysis, that what has happened. Like uh, suppose an IPL match is going on, and in normal conditions, the audience will be there, right? So how many male to female ratio was there? Okay. Or what was the percentage of suppose Mumbai and Chennai match? So how many supporters were there for Mumbai and for Chennai? Or how many sixes were hit on that day with respect to total number of balls, or how many boundaries were there, how many ones or twos were there? All these things are like describing what has happened. It has no relation with why it has happened, right? So we are not talking about why did only 48% female supporters come and 52% male supporters come. We are not concerned about that. We are concerned about what has happened, right? So that is called a descriptive analytics, how we are describing what has happened. Okay. Next step comes as diagnostics, or why did it happen? So next step is like, suppose in that area where the match is happening, there the male to female ratio is skewed. So to every male, every 100 males, there are only 900 females or something. So there may be a similarity in trend of the supporters as well. So that may be the reason. So we can correlate between the gender ratio to the gender ratio of the area to the gender ratio of the supporters that came into that IPL match. Or maybe the match is happening in Mumbai, with Mumbai and Chennai being playing. So the supporters in Mumbai for Mumbai will be generally greater, assuming not everyone is a fan of Dhoni. So in that sense, we can give some idea of why also things are happening. So that part where we give an idea of a relational characteristics between one aspect to another. Suppose in our sense, why is the factor of safety more when the slope is gentler, or the overall slope decreases from 50 to 30? Why is that? So what is the relation between these two? We are not talking about just enumerating the factor of safety. Okay, we are talking about what happens with respect to another parameter or another factor that we are considering now. So we have moved from what has happened to why it has happened. So some relationship is there. Now this relationship can be with respect to one factor. So suppose in terms of factor of safety, we are just relating with, as last example is for angles. We can have different multiple factors as well. So the angles can be one, the height can be another, water pressure can be another, material properties. So many parameters can be there, and we are relating to factor of safety. So that also can be there, right? Again, in this case also, the data that we took in two examples. For example, this factor of safety is analytic type of data where numerical values are being analyzed, right? In the supporters or who has more, we are basically doing in bounded type of data where the supporters can be either from one for suppose Mumbai or for Chennai. So bounded data is there, either this or that. There can be multiple options as well. So open-ended data, closed-ended data, there are different types of data as well. So we will discuss those. Now, another type of analysis will be the next step of this, when we are trying to find out why did it happen. So we can also find what will happen in a predictive sense. So that constitutes predictive analysis. Our focus will be in these two types of analysis, diagnostics and predictive. Why is that? Mostly we will be using whatever data we get to understand what is happening, right? And to basically predict what will happen in future and to design our mines, our ventilation models, our slopes, uh, our pit optimizations and all based on the data that we get, right? So that's what the purpose of uh, this this module for this computer applications will be, to concentrate on what kind of relationships are there between the data sets, what type of patterns we can understand from what data that we get, right? And from that patterns, can we actually find a model that explains those distributions? Can we actually make a numerical equation, or suppose a neural network, or suppose a fuzzy logic interface that will give us an idea of if this is the input, this will be the output, something like that, right? So if we can create a model from this, then we can do the predictive work uh, easily, right? So the important part between these two, the center two, is finding that model. From when we move from diagnostics to predictive, we have to have that model that will actually explain how the diagnostics things are working, or the how why this happened part is explained from that part, right? And when we move to predictive, we have that model and we can actually give new values to it. Based on the accuracy of the model, we will get accurate results. And that's the whole point of the statistical analysis that we'll be talking about. So these two will be the major aspects of our analysis and our discussions in the following classes as well. Another step to that, if we have the predictions and we have all the relations with us, so how can we make it happen? Like now we are talking about what has not happened till now. Till the third stage, we were talking about based on what has happened, we are making predictions. The next step of that is statistical analysis will be what can we do to make the change happen, right? So these are generally more limited to the business strategies based on the what kind of predictive models they design. They understand how the market works. So very applicable in stocks, very applicable in business investments, mutual funds. All these are based on these prescriptive type of analytics. So predictive and prescriptive also work hand in hand. So once you have the predictive models, you can actually prescribe new analytics and then extrapolate to find out what will happen in future. And on the basis of that, how things will change. Okay. So starting from what has happened to how it has happened and why it has happened to what will happen and how we can change it. All these part will be some aspect of statistical modeling or statistical analysis that uh, that can be done on the data that we have, right? Any questions on this till now? I think we'll cover more things, so things will be much better, clearer. Okay, right. So what can we, now we have understood a few of the aspects of what we can do in a statistical analysis, what all things are done. So let's take some cases or some ideas of what each of those are. So one idea of doing this descriptive type of analysis that we discussed right now is to represent our data, right? So suppose we have a data that analyzes all the ages of the workers that are working in an underground mine. So there can be uh, different distributions, right? So there can be ranging from 21, 32, 51, 42, 29, 48, 51, and so on, right? So many like randomly distributed values will be there. So when we have these kind of data, how can we represent them in 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 a way that makes sense when we get this? So just reading these values doesn't make much sense, except that, okay, maybe I can identify 51 is repeating once. Maybe I can identify that most of them are, or all of them are above 20. And maybe I can identify something else. But as the data set become larger and larger, these identifications, manual identifications, are become more difficult, right? So the first part, as we discussed, was the way in which we describe our data or we present our data, right? And uh, many ways are there. Uh, Histograms, you are already aware. So you can represent your samples in, or represent your data in form of histogram. Suppose distribute the age from 20 to suppose 60, and divide the whole area into ranges, and then we can find out how many people are there. So it will be like a frequency distribution curve that we actually did when we were discussing about statistical analysis, right? So a way to do that is statistically defining or the statistical frequency distribution uh, method for defining the data set is by defining the ranges and dividing the number of uh, values to the histograms. This is one. Same can be actually converted to, if you remember, we have converted from frequency to probability, very easy. So that if you remember, we have converted from frequency divided by the total area below this curve, and found out that the total probability at the edge of this will be 100%, right? So in that sense, we have basically divided our area. So this example was basically an example of a normal distribution. And we had in our classes, we have seen so many other kinds of distribution as well, right? And basically each of these distribution, as we know, have certain characteristics. So a normal distribution will have a mean and a median at the same place. And based on the standard deviations, we can actually predict how much data is uh, falling in what category, right? If we plot a uh, cumulative data distribution, we have seen by this plotting a cumulative data distribution, we can actually find out the percentage of probability that we can get, right? If we want to find the probability of a number that is below certain number, we can actually get that probability from that cumulative distribution. So all these things we have discussed, I think, many number of times. Even those who are doing MS Mine Systems Lab, the last uh, statistical analysis we done in the PERT, right? So there also we did similar statistical analysis where mean time and was calculated based on the most probable completion time and the optimistic and the pessimistic, right? Remember? And then we found out how the probability of completion of a project can be found out by finding the Z values. All these things are basically the statistical analysis. So the same things are there. We can distribute our data in form of probability. We can distribute our data in terms of frequency. This is called a box and whisker model. Uh, there is a box and there are whiskers. Basically, that's the whole name, whole fundamental of the name. And the concept is that this middle part is the mean here, and this part are something called the quarters. So whole data is basically divided into 4 sections, and based on the distribution of the mean with respect to the median, this skewness is decided. So in an ideal condition, the center line will be representing the mean and the median. But when the skewness is there, where suppose the data is a little bit shifted on the axis towards right or towards left, similarly the average or the mean will be shifted towards the right or towards the left. And this basically are certain representations of these quarters. So all the data is divided into 4 zones. So minimum, this is Q1, this is Q2, Q3, and this is maximum. So based on these divisions, the values of Q1 and Q3 are found. Q2 is basically the median, and based on these, the whole data can be represented into just this box and these whiskers. So maximum minimum data will be represented by this. The bulk of the data will be represented by this box, and this box will basically give us an idea of where the mean lies, where the first quarter lies, and where the third quarter lies. So based on that, we can actually, similar to how we represent our data in terms of probability distributions and frequency distributions, this is also a way of representing the data. A good thing to know, if you want more details on this box and whisker, I can give you some links so you can look into it, how actually you can convert this kind of randomly distributed data to this box and whisker model. What is the meaning of skewness? What is the meaning of tail that is there? So skewing to the right, skewing to the left, and so on. Basically, all these concepts are statistical what we say terminologies. So like we say a raise or a wins is a mining terminology, right? So similarly, for how much skewness is there, how much what kind of tail is it has, and where is the median shifted, and so on. So do check out if you are interested, box and whisker model. Okay, there are other models as well where the data can be represented in different forms, but not much important to know, specifically if we are just talking about the simple set of data that we are representing here, right? So this is kind of one way of visualizing data. There are many other ways, and when we go for the correlational type data or we give the relationships, then we move on to more complex type of demonstrations or descriptions. So let's take more examples. When we do higher sort of representations, we can go for pie charts. We can go for histograms we have already seen. Pie charts generally more represent percentages and proportions. So these basically give relationships between the data and the underlying populations. With what percentage data with respect to the overall population is there. And with respect to that, if you, for example, this one is an example of the amount of pollution that is caused in various type of sectors. So this one is a rural sector. This one is the urban sector. This one is the industrial sector, A and B and C. So these kind of plots basically gives us an idea of what is happening with respect to type of population we are dealing with. So type of When in statistical terms, population is basically representing uh, well, all the data sets that we can get from a place. Population, like for example, if we are doing a survey of uh, people living in an urban area that have a car, right? So all the people living in that area fall into that category of population, or when we call about in statistical terms, right? And when we choose some sets out of that population, that can be the sample fraction, representative samples, or the samples that we take, right? Uh, Simple terminology is intuitive enough, but can be sometimes confusing when we go into different aspects. Suppose when we talk about factor of safety in slope, uh, the population may mean all the different slopes that are there for the analysis, right? And the selection that we do from those slopes, suppose the example that we took of the 100 slopes that were having high vegetation, in those population of all the slopes, our sample was those 100 slopes. So that is the way in which uh, uh, the terminology in which the statistics are defined. So that can be there. So pie charts are there that represents this in relationships between the population as well as the data, right? And coming to the predictive analysis, and this one we will be seeing. So how the model that summarizes the understanding of how data relates to the underlying population. Last time it was like the uh, how it is basically relating to the population, just uh, just the descriptive form. But now the next step is a quantitative analysis, like with what respect does it relate to. So in to find out with what respect in terms of quantitative analysis, we can actually have uh, many methods. One way is the regression analysis, linear regression, right? That I think many of you know by in Excel, like adding a trend line, as simple as that. But statistically speaking, it's not as simple. Just adding a trend line anywhere and by yourself is not a practical way to do it. Excel has this very easy regression tool for trend line options. Uh, but if you want to go into understanding what is happening while you add that trend line, so that understanding is actually the basis of whatever type of predictive analysis or whatever type of regression analysis we can do further. Okay. So this we will be taking in detail when we talk about regression in itself. But just to give you an idea that whenever we add a line, which will be defined by certain equations, right? Y equals to mx plus c. Whenever we add a line, we will have some points that will lie exactly on that line, right? We'll have some points that will lie above that line and below that line. So for each and every case, there will be either y equals to mx plus c, or y is greater than mx plus c, or y is less than mx plus c, right? For each and every point, any of these three conditions will be true. Though for the exact equal condition, there is no error. So that means the line exactly represents that sample or that data. But for both of these conditions, the non-equal conditions, that is less than and greater than, there will be some error. And there are, if you have some idea of how to represent data or how to do these kind of analysis, you will know that there are different kinds of error that we can calculate. So how much deviation is there from this line? We can actually directly, very simply, we can calculate the y difference in this, right? We can actually calculate much more sophisticated errors such as root mean square errors, right? mean square errors. There are many types of error analysis based on what is applicable at what places. And the basis of regression is basically to reduce these errors as much as possible. So the concept behind that is, if we suppose for me, I started a line like this, and I found out that the root mean square errors or the mean square errors, whichever I found in that case, are average, or suppose zero point 0.2 or whatever value you can suggest, right? And another line I tried, suppose that this one will have 0.18. So this line will have much better suitability towards the fitting as compared to the other line. Similarly, there will be other lines as well which have lesser RMSE or MSE, whichever case we are considering. And based on the least error that we find in many types of lines, the final regression line is obtained. So just right clicking the data and adding a trend line that looks so simple in Excel is basically having a lot of things that are going on the background, right? So this also I have told you on a very gross scale or very generalized form. Even the calculations of root mean square root mean square errors and errors that are there, the outliers that are there, the point in which the C will start. So the interpolation point where it will start, what will be the values of M, how will those be decided? We can't just assume all the values of C and all the values of M and keep on finding the RMS for all the possible lines. That's not practical, right? That will take a lot of time. So based on the data also, we the regression basically shortens or gives a range where the values of C and M can lie, right? And there are many algorithms that decide this, and this a basic regression basically stops when we reach the minimum RMSE or the maximum fitting criteria. So fitting criteria, I think once we discussed the R square values or the R values, the coefficient, right? So those are the conditions that will be uh, defining criteria for fitting. And this is just for the a linear regression that is defined by y equals to mx plus c. If you go into more complex, there will be polynomial regression that will have, suppose, a general equation of y equals to ax square plus bx plus c in second order, or ax cube plus bx square plus cx plus d in third order, and so on, right? There can be multiple order of polynomial regression. These are linear regressions. Then there can be non-linear regressions where the relationships are non-linear. They are not defined by linear relationships. And there can be so many exponential, logarithmic, multiple types of fittings can be done, and total area of curve fitting is covering that aspect. So what we'll be doing in our coming classes is we'll be taking these regression analysis, understanding the concept behind it, how the regression analysis is done, and using certain tools in MATLAB, in Excel as well, in certain other softwares that are available with us, possibly SPSS or something. We will see how the fitting or the regression analysis will be done, right? And what's the concept behind it? Then we can use many examples and try to find and understand what are the fitting criterias, what is R square value, what does that mean, and how is it calculated, right? So all these things we will be covering and touching on the surface, and understanding how any other kind of analysis any other regression analysis can be done. Okay. So we'll not go into detail right now, but when we take these topics in next classes, we will go into certain more details and discuss these various aspects of regression as well. So regression in this case is linear regression or multiple regression or non-linear regression. There can also be cases of multivariable regression. So here we have just y and x as two parameters, right? But y can have maybe x1 and x2 as relative parameters. We can have x1, x2, x3, and so on. So if this kind of situation is there, where suppose we are doing some regression in 3-dimension or multiple dimensions, that kind of analysis is called multivariable regression analysis, or MVRA. This is important, much used analysis, and there are many methods of MVRA as well. So we will be discussing those methods, how, what are the relationships between those, some advantages and disadvantages, applicability, and so on. Because in practice, generally a single regression analysis is much easier to do, and also we don't find in nature is just one variable affecting the practical physics of the scenario, right? So many methods are there, many variables will be there that will be affecting, and ultimately our aim will be to find those relationships, right? Let's move on quickly. We have this hypothesis testing, and this is also an important part of statistic analysis. Basically, what example I gave about the vegetation, that example is basically the statistical testing. So if I hypothesize that at a certain situation, certain thing happens that is not according to what has been established. So suppose that same example, that I say that of the region that I am talking about, the factor of safety of most of the slopes is around 1.25. But I'd say that the factor of safety of vegetated slopes is 10% more, or is close to 1.5, suppose, right? So this hypothesis, this is the reality, right? The baseline. This one, I am hypothesizing that whichever slope is vegetated, that has 1.5 as a factor of safety, right? Now, for this, I can inspect, suppose n number of slopes, 100 slopes, and find out that yes, actually I found that the average factor of safety for this was 1.5. And this can be my analysis, and this can I can give these results and say to the peers that okay, I found that for all the 100 locations I took, factor of safety is 1.5 for me, and therefore I have proven that factor of safety for vegetated places is more. But there can be condition, as I said, that in general, randomly selected values of suppose 100, there can be condition that it can come as 1.25 in many, it can come as 1.5 in some scenarios, right? So all this concept is basically a probability distribution, because in contrast to the deterministic approach that we take, okay, I'll be quickly finishing this. In contrast to the deterministic approach that we take to find a single value of FOS, we generally go for the statistical method. Okay, so if we say this is 1.25 and the factor of safety varies, there will be a case where this will be suppose this is 2 and this is 0.8. So there will be cases where 1.5 will lie someplace here, right? So is it statistically significant that the 100 that I got will that be small enough that it lies in the niche zone or the outlier zone? That we have to find out by many analysis. So there are one-tailed tests, there are two-tailed tests, and there are Z tests, T tests, and so on. So once one of the lectures we will be discussing about this, the p values, and you might have heard about the p hacking, p values, what these are. So we will be discussing those, what is their significance, and how we can actually judge our hypothesis, whatever we are giving is true or significant or not. Okay. And finally, the predictive part. So prediction is, as I said, important, and we use many other methods. Neural networks are one of them. So neural networks can form models or predictive models that can lead us to give us an idea of what, if we give some inputs, what output we can get based on modeling that it does. MVRA is another way that we already have discussed, multiple variable regression analysis. Fuzzy logics are there. So all these types of predictive models that we make, we will be using for our prediction analysis. And the concept behind these and why these are used, where these can be used, where is neural network usable, where is multivariable regression analysis suitable, and so on. So these all things also we'll cover in our coming classes. So that's a stop here because already we are shooting ahead. Any questions you can discuss now before we close? Tomorrow class we might discuss about what type of variables we have, and also we will start about the regression part. So how the regression analysis works and what all things are there when we do a regression analysis. Okay, any questions? सब समझ आ गया? वेरी गुड. पहले ही छुट्टी के पहले ही दिन ओवरलोड हो गया. चलो कल विल डिस्कस इट लिटिल बिट स्लोअर. इतना ज़्यादा इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं देंगे, थोड़ा सा इसको और कवर करेंगे. ठीक है? ओके, इफ नो क्वेश्चंस फॉर टुडे, आई विल स्टॉप हियर.